Hello, welcome to part 2 in our Star Trek Online Shipbuilding Basics series. In this series we will go over everything you need to know to set up your character and ships, with both beginner and budget-friendly options as well as premium endgame setups. In this video, we will be going over personal space traits. The best space traits come from lockboxes, most of which will cost you around 50 million energy credits on the exchange. Before we get into those though, I'm going to show you some of the free trait choices that come with your character. Depending on if you are an alien or not, and if you have upgraded to an elite captain, you will have between 9 and 11 trait slots. As you can see, I am an alien captain with elite training, so I have 11 slots open. First on our list is accurate, increasing your ship's accuracy rating. Next would be either beam or cannon training, depending what kind of weapons you are using on your ship. Efficient Captain is another good starter option, giving you a little more power for your ship. Fleet Coordinator is an excellent trait for team combat. It will provide a 10% damage bonus in a full team of 5. Of the free traits available, it is the only one we use on an endgame build. Innocuous is okay for a little extra crit severity, and Operative for some crit chance and severity. Warp Theorist is also nice for a little extra power. This brings us to 7 traits. For a starter build, you can fill in the remaining slots with whatever you have available that sounds interesting. The remaining free traits don't really make much of an impact, unfortunately. Before we start on the best trait options, a quick word from our sponsor, Lobby Consortium. Lobby Consortium has everything you need for your Star Trek Online adventures, the latest promotional, lockbox, and Lobby ships, energy credits, master keys, costumes, and more. Lobby Consortium is run by long-time players of Star Trek Online with extensive knowledge of the game. When you buy from Lobby Consortium, you can expect fast, professional, and discreet service. Check out lobbyconsortium.com today. Now we are going to look at the best trait options. Unless otherwise noted, these are all going to be coming from the Infinity Lockbox and can usually be found on the exchange for between 30 and 50 million EC each. The first trait is for tactical captains only. It is a good day to die. This trait will allow you to use your captain's ability go down fighting at any hull level, and always scale as though your hull was at 50%. Next up, we have Adaptive Offense. This trait gives you critical chance, which will change to critical damage when you have a critical hit. In practice, this trait will give you a 9% crit damage buff for almost the entire time you are in combat. Then we come to Duelist's Fervor. This trait will give you a 5% all damage buff whenever you or a team member destroys a target, meaning it will almost always be up. Next up, we have the only free trait worth using at endgame, Fleet Coordinator. As mentioned before, it will give you a 10% damage buff when in a group of 5. Fragment of AI Tech gives us a damage buff to our energy weapons based on our control expertise, and also increases our control expertise. Next up is Intel Handler. This trait will mark a target to be destroyed every 45 seconds, and when that target is destroyed, it will give you a 4% crit chance buff that lasts 45 seconds. It does not matter if you destroy the target or one of your team does, just that the target is destroyed. Then we have Intelligence Agent Attaché. This trait will reduce your captain ability's cooldown by 2% when you critically hit a target, as often as once every 1.33 seconds. Given how high your crit rates are, this can become a very significant cooldown reduction for your captain abilities. Next, we have Terran Targeting Systems. This trait will give you a 15% critical severity buff at all times, with the downside being when you take a critical hit, your speed is reduced by 10% for 5 seconds. This downside is, however, almost non-existent in PvE content, as your enemy has a 2.5% critical chance rating. The next trait is the Boimler Effect. This trait comes from the Lobby store for 200 Lobby crystals, or is also available on the exchange for around 60 million EC usually. This trait gives you a 17.5% chance every time you use a Bridge Officer ability to reduce all Bridge Officer abilities to their global cooldown. This is by far the best Bridge Officer cooldown reduction we have available. Next is Unconventional Systems, also known as Uncon for short. This trait will reduce the cooldown of your universal consoles by 7% every time you use a control ability such as jam sensors, gravity well, etc. This trait combined with the Boimler effect trait, allow us to get our universal consoles back up very quickly just by spamming control abilities. That brings us to 10 traits. If you are an alien like myself, you have an 11th trait to fill in. Currently, I'm running Fireball Escape. This trait is supposed to give you immunity to 1 warp core breach every 120 seconds, and then give you a series of buffs when it uses this immunity. While you are only able to get the buffs every 120 seconds, it currently gives you immunity to any and all warp core breaches, without a 120-second lockout on the immunity. So unless this is fixed, I would recommend it as your 11th trait. Now, I will give you a few other options, in case you are not a tactical captain and can't use a good day to die, or cannot get some of these traits. The first 2 are for beam builds only. Symbiotic Ice will add 6% damage to your beams as cold damage. It comes from the Infinity Lockbox. Beam Barrage comes from reaching level 15 in your beam crafting skill line, and will simply add 6% damage to your beam weapons. Inspirational Leader is another option from the Infinity Lockbox. It will give you a 10% chance on Bridge Officer ability activation for a +10 buff to all of your skills, stacking 3 times. In practice, it is very easy to maintain 3 stacks of this trait for a +30 to all your skills. It was for a long time a must-have on all builds, and while not as popular anymore given other options, it is still a good trait if you have an open slot. Lastly, depending on your weapon type, you can use beam or cannon training, or if you have them, the superior versions of these traits. Both of them are sold at the K13 Fleet Holding for 100,000 fleet credits and 25,000 dilithium, and add 7.5% damage to your beam or cannon weapons instead of 5%, like the base versions do. This concludes our personal space traits video. If you found it helpful, please like and subscribe for more Star Trek Online videos. Be sure to check out our next video in this series covering Starship traits. See you out there.